The Teutonic Order, formerly known as the Order of Brothers of the German House of St. Mary in Jerusalem, was established during the tumultuous period of the Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192. Its origins lay in the chaos and fervor of the Crusades, where European Christian forces sought to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control. Initially, the order began as a modest hospital organization in Acre, dedicated to providing medical care and support to sick and injured pilgrims and crusaders. Inspired by the chivalric ideals of service, protection, and devotion to faith, it was soon recognized as a military order, combining the roles of warriors and monks. In 1198, the Teutonic Order was formally restructured as a military and religious institution under the patronage of Pope Innocent III and the Holy Roman Emperor. It adopted a rule inspired by the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller, two other prominent military orders of the time. The Teutonic Knights took solemn vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, aligning their lives with the spiritual discipline of monastic life. However, unlike traditional monks, they were also trained soldiers, committed to the defense and expansion of Christendom through military action. The order's mission was twofold: to safeguard Christians in dangerous frontier regions and to convert non-Christian populations through a combination of preaching, diplomacy, and, when necessary, warfare. While its early focus was on the Crusades and the Levant, the Teutonic Order's leadership soon realized that its resources and manpower could be better utilized in other parts of the Christian world where the frontier of Christendom was under threat. Their unique structure, blending religious piety with military efficiency, made them an attractive force for rulers seeking aid against hostile neighbors or pagan groups. This dual nature of the Teutonic Order laid the groundwork for its role as a powerful actor in the Christianization and territorial expansion of Europe. Its transition from a small hospital order to a dominant military and administrative power highlights the evolving dynamics of medieval Christendom and the rise of militant religiosity during this era. Before the arrival of the Teutonic Order, the region of Prussia was a rugged and forested land inhabited by various Baltic tribes collectively known as the Prussians. These tribes shared a common language and culture, but were politically fragmented and organized into small, autonomous clans. The Prussians practiced a polytheistic religion deeply rooted in nature worship, with sacred groves, rivers, and springs serving as sites of worship. Their pantheon included gods associated with the elements, fertility, and war, reflecting their close connection to the natural world and the challenges of their environment. The Prussian way of life was primarily agrarian, with hunting and fishing playing vital roles in their economy. However, they were also skilled warriors, renowned for their fierce independence and resistance to external domination. Their society placed a strong emphasis on kinship ties, and decisions were often made collectively within clans, making them difficult to unify under a single leadership. This decentralized structure, while resilient in some ways, made them vulnerable to organized external forces like the Teutonic Order. Christianization efforts in the region had been sporadic and largely unsuccessful before the arrival of the Teutonic Knights. Missionaries from neighboring Christian states, such as Poland and Denmark, had attempted to convert the Prussians through peaceful means. However, these efforts were often met with resistance or outright hostility. For the Prussians, Christianity was not merely a foreign religion, but also a symbol of cultural and political domination. Accepting it often meant submitting to foreign powers, something the fiercely independent tribes were unwilling to do. Adding to the tension was the constant conflict along the borders of Prussian territory. Neighboring Christian states, particularly Poland, frequently clashed with the Prussian tribes over land, resources, and religious differences. These raids and counter-raids fostered a cycle of violence that kept the region in a state of perpetual instability. For Christian rulers, the Prussian tribes were not only a spiritual challenge, but also a military threat. This pagan landscape presented both an opportunity and a challenge for the Teutonic Order. On one hand, the Prussians' resistance to Christianity justified the order's intervention as a religious crusade sanctioned by the Pope. On the other hand, the fragmented and fiercely independent nature of Prussian society meant that the order would face prolonged and grueling campaigns to subdue the region. The deep-rooted pagan traditions and strong cultural identity of the Prussians would prove to be formidable obstacles in the order's quest to conquer and Christianize the land. In this volatile and contested landscape, the Teutonic Order entered with a clear mission: to bring the light of Christianity to a land shrouded, in their eyes, in the darkness of paganism. But doing so would require not only military might, but also a relentless campaign to dismantle the social, cultural, and religious foundations of the Prussian tribes. The conquest of Prussia by the Teutonic Order was not merely a regional conflict, but part of a broader movement supported and legitimized by the Catholic Church. At the heart of this campaign was the unyielding support of the papacy, which framed the conquest as a holy crusade, akin to those in the Holy Land. The idea of extending Christendom into pagan territories resonated deeply with the religious and political aspirations of the Church during the High Middle Ages. The papacy viewed the Baltic region as the last frontier for Christianization in Europe, and Prussia became a focal point for these efforts. Pope Innocent III, one of the most influential pontiffs of the era, laid the groundwork for the Church's support of the crusade. In the early 13th century, Innocent issued a series of papal bulls that sanctioned the military campaigns against the pagan Prussians. These decrees declared that the Christianization of the Baltic was a sacred duty and granted crusaders participating in the campaigns the same spiritual benefits as those fighting in the Holy Land. This included the promise of indulgences, which absolved participants of their sins and guaranteed eternal salvation, a powerful incentive for knights and nobles to take up the cross. Papal endorsement transformed the conquest of Prussia into more than just a regional military operation. It became a divinely sanctioned mission with wide-ranging implications for the Church's authority. The papacy's involvement also ensured that the campaign attracted significant attention and resources from across Europe. Knights, nobles, and mercenaries were drawn to the Baltic, not only by the promise of spiritual rewards, but also by the potential for material gains, such as land and wealth in the newly conquered territories. The Church's support was not limited to spiritual encouragement. It provided organizational backing, funding, and logistical assistance to the Teutonic Order. Papal envoys often acted as intermediaries, rallying European rulers and nobles to contribute to the crusade. The papacy also facilitated alliances between the Teutonic Order and other Christian states, ensuring a steady flow of manpower and resources. In return, the Teutonic Order pledged its unwavering loyalty to the Church, reinforcing the papacy's influence in the region. The framing of the conquest as a holy crusade had profound implications for how the campaign was conducted. It justified the use of extreme measures, including the forced conversion of Prussian tribes, the destruction of their sacred sites, and the imposition of Christian laws and customs. By portraying the Prussians as heathens resisting divine will, the Church provided a moral rationale for the military actions of the Teutonic Order. This religious justification not only strengthened the resolve of the Crusaders, but also diminished potential criticism from within Christendom. Papal support was instrumental in shaping the narrative and execution of the Prussian crusade. By aligning the conquest with the broader goals of the Catholic Church, the papacy ensured that the campaign would have both spiritual significance and political legitimacy. This endorsement elevated the efforts of the Teutonic Order from a regional conflict to a pivotal chapter in the history of the Christianization of Europe. The involvement of the Teutonic Order in Prussia was set in motion by an invitation from Duke Conrad of Masovia, a Polish noble facing a dire predicament. During the early 13th century, the Duchy of Masovia, located along the eastern frontier of Christian Europe, was under constant threat from the pagan Prussian tribes. These tribes frequently raided Masovian territories, disrupting trade routes, pillaging settlements, and creating a climate of insecurity. For Conrad, these incursions posed not only a military challenge, but also an existential threat to his rule, as they undermined his ability to protect his subjects and maintain control over his lands. Conrad had previously attempted to address the Prussian threat by organizing his own military campaigns and seeking aid from neighboring Christian states. However, these efforts proved insufficient. The Prussian tribes were resilient, skilled in guerrilla warfare, and deeply familiar with the challenging terrain of their homeland. Masovia's resources were stretched thin, and its fragmented feudal armies were no match for the persistent Prussian raids. Facing this daunting situation, Conrad recognized the need for a powerful and well-organized ally to help secure his borders and stabilize his duchy. In 1226, Conrad turned to the Teutonic Order, a military religious organization with a growing reputation for its effectiveness in crusading endeavors. He extended an invitation to the order, offering them the opportunity to establish a base of operations in his lands in exchange for their military assistance against the Prussian tribes. Specifically, Conrad granted the order the fortress of Chelmno, and the surrounding region, strategically located near the Prussian frontier. This agreement, however, came with a significant condition. The Teutonic Knights were expected to launch a crusade against the Prussians, subjugating them and bringing them under Christian rule. Conrad's decision to involve the Teutonic Order was not without risks or controversy. By inviting a powerful external force into his domain, he effectively relinquished control over parts of his territory and opened the door to potential conflicts of interest. The Teutonic Order, while nominally loyal to the Church and its Christian allies, operated as an autonomous entity with its own agenda. Their ambitions often extended beyond their immediate missions, as they sought to expand their influence and establish independent control over conquered territories. To formalize the arrangement and secure the legitimacy of the Teutonic Order's actions, Conrad sought papal and imperial approval for the crusade. This led to the issuance of the Golden Bull of Rimini in 1226 by Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, which granted the Teutonic Order autonomy over any lands it conquered from the Prussians. This decree not only solidified the order's legal claims to Prussian territory, but also ensured that their mission was recognized as a legitimate crusade within Christendom. The alliance between Duke Conrad and the Teutonic Order marked a turning point in the history of the Baltic region. What began as a defensive measure to protect Masovia soon evolved into a full-scale campaign of conquest and Christianization that would reshape the political and cultural landscape of Prussia. For Conrad, the arrival of the Teutonic Knights provided a temporary solution to his immediate problems. However, it also set the stage for the Order's rise as a dominant power in the region, with consequences that extended far beyond Masovia's borders. The Golden Bull of Rimini, issued in 1226 by Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, was a pivotal document that laid the legal and political foundation for the Teutonic Order's conquest of Prussia. This decree granted the order autonomy and sovereignty over any lands it conquered from the pagan Prussians, ensuring that their mission would be both legitimate and protected within the broader framework of Christendom. It was a decisive step that transformed the Teutonic Order from a wandering group of crusaders into a territorial power with clear rights and responsibilities. The origins of the Golden Bull of Rimini can be traced to the negotiations between Duke Conrad of Masovia, the Teutonic Order, and the imperial court. While Conrad had invited the order to aid in his struggles against the Prussians, he lacked the authority to grant them independent control over conquered territories. To secure the order's participation and provide them with the legal assurances they demanded, Conrad appealed to Emperor Frederick II, the supreme authority of the Holy Roman Empire. Frederick, known for his ambitious and pragmatic approach to politics, recognized the strategic value of supporting the Teutonic Order's mission. The bull outlined several key provisions that were critical to the order's success. First, it explicitly recognized the Teutonic Order's right to govern and administer any lands they acquired through conquest in Prussia. This provision ensured that the order would operate as an independent state, free from interference by local rulers like Conrad. The autonomy granted by the bull allowed the Teutonic Knights to implement their own laws, build fortifications, and establish a stable administrative structure without external constraints. Second, the bull affirmed the religious nature of the order's mission, framing their conquest as a holy crusade against paganism. By doing so, it granted the order the same spiritual privileges and protections as crusaders fighting in the Holy Land. This included the right to collect tithes, receive donations from Christian supporters, and recruit knights and soldiers from across Europe. The spiritual legitimacy conferred by the bull attracted volunteers, resources, and financial support, all of which were essential for sustaining the order's campaigns. Third, The Golden Bull of Rimini aligned the interests of the Holy Roman Empire with those of the Teutonic Order. Frederick II, a ruler with grand aspirations for the empire, saw the Order's crusade as an opportunity to extend imperial influence into the Baltic region. By granting the Order autonomy, he effectively created a loyal vassal state that could serve as a buffer against hostile powers and a base for further expansion. In return, the Teutonic Order pledged its loyalty to the emperor, reinforcing the bond between the two entities. The Golden Bull of Rimini also had significant implications for the balance of power in the Baltic region. By legitimizing the Teutonic Order's territorial ambitions, the bull marginalized other Christian rulers, such as the Polish and Danish monarchs, who had competing claims in Prussia. This created tensions and rivalries that would shape the political dynamics of the region for decades to come. The bull's emphasis on the autonomy of the order also signaled a shift in the nature of crusading, as it allowed a military religious organization to operate as a quasi-sovereign state. Finally, the Golden Bull of Rimini became a symbol of the Teutonic Order's authority and a cornerstone of its legal and moral justification for the conquest of Prussia. It served as a reminder of the Order's divine mission and its special status within Christendom. The document was frequently invoked by the Order in disputes with other powers, reinforcing its claims to legitimacy and independence. In essence, the Golden Bull of Rimini was more than just a legal charter. It was a declaration of the Teutonic Order's place in the medieval world. It provided the framework for their ambitious campaign in Prussia and set the stage for their transformation into a dominant political and military force in the Baltic region. A crucial component of the Teutonic Order's success in conquering and holding Prussia was their systematic strategy of fortification and colonization. Unlike traditional medieval warfare, which often relied on pitched battles and quick victories, the Order employed a methodical approach to subjugate the Prussian tribes and secure their newly acquired territories. This strategy combined the construction of formidable fortresses with the deliberate settlement of colonists, transforming the region both militarily and culturally. At the heart of the Teutonic Order's strategy was the construction of castles and fortified strongholds. These structures served multiple purposes. They were military bases, administrative centers, and symbols of dominance over the conquered population. The Order's castles were often strategically located near rivers, trade routes, or contested tribal areas, allowing them to control key points of access and project their power across the region. The construction of these fortresses required significant resources and manpower, often involving not only the Order's knights, but also recruited laborers and craftsmen from Europe. One of the most iconic examples of this strategy was the establishment of Marienburg, Malbork, which became the Order's headquarters and one of the largest brick castles in the world. Marienburg was not merely a military structure. It was a political and religious center that showcased the Order's strength and organizational capabilities. From this fortress, the Teutonic leadership coordinated their campaigns, managed the administration of Prussia, and hosted dignitaries from across Europe. The grandeur and scale of Marienburg symbolized the permanence of the Order's presence in the Baltic region. The fortresses also played a critical role in the defense of the Order's territories. The Prussian tribes, skilled in guerrilla warfare, frequently attempted to resist and reclaim their lands through raids and uprisings. The Order's castles provided secure bases from which knights could launch counterattacks, shelter during sieges, and stockpile supplies for prolonged campaigns. The interconnected network of fortifications created a web of defensive positions that made it difficult for the fragmented Prussian tribes to mount sustained resistance. Alongside their fortification efforts, the Teutonic Order implemented an extensive colonization program. This involved inviting settlers, primarily from Germany and other parts of Europe, to populate the conquered lands. These settlers were often provided with incentives such as land grants, tax exemptions, and legal privileges to encourage migration. The newcomers brought with them advanced agricultural techniques, trade practices, and Christian traditions, which helped to transform the Prussian landscape. The colonization process served multiple purposes. Economically, it revitalized the region by establishing farming communities, markets, and towns that contributed to the Order's wealth and sustainability. Culturally, It facilitated the Christianization and assimilation of the Prussian population by introducing European customs, language, and laws. The settlers often built churches and schools, which became focal points for the spread of Christianity and the integration of local communities into the broader Christian world. Politically, the colonization effort reinforced the order's control over Prussia. By filling the region with loyal settlers, the order diluted the influence of the native Prussian tribes and reduced the likelihood of large-scale uprisings. The settlers, dependent on the order for protection and governance, became a stable base of support for their rule. Over time, the demographic and cultural transformation of Prussia ensured that the region was firmly integrated into the Christian and Germanic spheres of influence. The combination of fortification and colonization was not without its challenges. The construction of castles and the settlement of colonists required significant investment and logistical planning. The order often faced resistance from local populations, who viewed these efforts as acts of conquest and subjugation. However, the Teutonic Order's disciplined administration and relentless pursuit of their mission allowed them to overcome these obstacles and establish a lasting presence in the region. Through their strategy of fortification and colonization, the Teutonic Order not only secured their military dominance, but also laid the groundwork for the long-term transformation of Prussia. This dual approach of building strongholds and fostering settlement was instrumental in consolidating their power and ensuring the success of their crusade in the Baltic frontier. The Teutonic Order's conquest of Prussia was marked by relentless and brutal military campaigns aimed at subduing the fiercely independent Prussian tribes. These campaigns were not simply battles between two opposing forces, but were prolonged, multifaceted struggles involving scorched earth tactics, punitive raids, and systematic efforts to dismantle the social and cultural fabric of the Prussian way of life. For the Order, this was not merely a war of conquest. It was a crusade imbued with religious fervor, framed as a righteous struggle to eradicate paganism and expand Christendom. The Prussian tribes were renowned for their warrior ethos and resistance to external domination. Comprised of decentralized clans, they relied on their deep knowledge of the region's dense forests, rivers, and marshlands to conduct guerrilla warfare. Their tactics involved ambushes, hit-and-run raids, and using the natural terrain to offset the technological and numerical superiority of the Teutonic Knights. The fragmented nature of the tribes, however, was both a strength and a weakness. While it allowed them to resist the Order's advances in localized skirmishes, it also made it difficult to coordinate a united front against the invading forces. The Order's response to this resistance was brutal and uncompromising. They conducted military campaigns designed to crush tribal opposition through sheer force and terror. Villages were razed, crops were burned, and sacred sites were desecrated to demoralize the Prussian population and undermine their cultural identity. Entire communities were often uprooted, with survivors forced into servitude or deported to distant regions. Those who resisted conversion to Christianity faced severe punishments, ranging from execution to exile. One of the key strategies employed by the Teutonic Order was the use of punitive expeditions, or chevauchés, where they would launch devastating raids into enemy territory to destroy resources and weaken the tribe's ability to sustain resistance. These raids were not limited to military targets. They deliberately targeted civilian populations to spread fear and chaos. The psychological impact of these campaigns was significant, as they created a pervasive sense of insecurity among the Prussian tribes and eroded their will to fight. The campaigns also involved prolonged sieges of tribal fortresses and strongholds, many of which were situated in remote and defensible locations. The Order employed advanced siege techniques, including the use of trebuchets, battering rams, and tunneling, to break through these defenses. However, the sieges were often grueling affairs, requiring substantial manpower and resources. Despite the challenges, the capture of these strongholds was crucial for consolidating control over key regions and breaking the resistance of individual clans. The Teutonic Order's campaigns were further bolstered by their ability to attract reinforcements from across Europe. The papal endorsement of their mission as a crusade meant that knights, mercenaries, and volunteers flocked to Prussia, drawn by promises of spiritual rewards and the opportunity for glory and plunder. These reinforcements allowed the order to sustain a prolonged military presence in the region, even as the campaigns dragged on for decades. Despite the order's military dominance, the conquest of Prussia was not achieved through force alone. The Teutonic Knights also sought to undermine the tribe's cohesion by exploiting internal divisions and forging alliances with rival factions. They used diplomacy and promises of protection to win over some clans, creating a divide-and-conquer dynamic that weakened the overall resistance. However, these alliances were often tenuous, as the order's ultimate goal was to impose their rule and Christianize the entire region. The brutality of the campaigns left a lasting legacy in Prussia. The Prussian tribes, once proud and independent, were systematically subdued, their lands confiscated, and their cultural identity suppressed. The forced Christianization of the population involved the destruction of sacred sites, the outlawing of traditional practices, and the imposition of European customs and laws. For the native Prussians, this period marked the end of their autonomy and the beginning of a new era under the domination of the Teutonic Order. While the campaigns were devastating for the Prussian tribes, they were instrumental in achieving the Order's objectives. Through a combination of military force, psychological warfare, and strategic alliances, the Teutonic Knights succeeded in breaking the resistance of the native population and establishing their rule over Prussia. However, the cost of this conquest was immense, leaving a trail of destruction and cultural erasure that would shape the history of the region for centuries to come. One of the central objectives of the Teutonic Order's conquest of Prussia was the Christianization of the pagan Prussian tribes. This was not merely a spiritual undertaking, but a process deeply intertwined with the political and military goals of the order. The conversion of the Prussian people was framed as a moral imperative, sanctioned by the Catholic Church and carried out with the zeal of a crusade. However, this process was anything but peaceful. It was a systematic and often brutal effort to eradicate traditional Prussian beliefs, dismantle their cultural institutions, and integrate them into the Christian world. The Prussian tribes adhered to a polytheistic religion deeply connected to their natural environment. They worshipped a pantheon of deities and spirits associated with forests, rivers, and other elements of nature, and their religious practices were centered around sacred groves, shrines, and communal rituals. These practices were not merely spiritual, but also integral to their social and political organization. As such, the imposition of Christianity represented not only a religious transformation, but also a profound disruption of their way of life. The Teutonic Order approached the task of Christianization with a combination of coercion and indoctrination. Upon conquering a region, one of their first actions was to destroy pagan shrines and sacred sites, which they regarded as symbols of heathen resistance. These acts of desecration were intended to demonstrate the supremacy of Christianity and to weaken the morale of the native population. In their place, the order constructed churches and monasteries, which became centers for religious instruction and the spread of Christian culture. Forced baptisms were a common practice during this period. Entire communities were often compelled to undergo the Christian sacrament of baptism, frequently under the threat of violence or death. The Teutonic Knights viewed baptism as a symbolic act of submission, both to the Christian faith and to the authority of the order. Those who refused to convert faced severe punishments, including confiscation of property, exile, or execution. In some cases, resistance to Christianization was met with mass reprisals, as the order sought to make an example of dissenters. To ensure the permanence of Christianization, the order implemented a comprehensive program of religious education and cultural assimilation. Priests and missionaries were brought to Prussia to teach the newly baptized population about the tenets of Christianity and to replace traditional beliefs with Christian doctrine. Sermons, hymns, and prayers were often conducted in Latin or German, further alienating the native population from their own linguistic and cultural heritage. The order also introduced Christian festivals and rituals, which were intended to supplant traditional Prussian celebrations and create a new sense of community around the Christian calendar. The Teutonic Order's Christianization efforts extended to the legal and administrative spheres. The imposition of Christian laws and customs was a key element of their strategy to transform Prussian society. Traditional tribal laws, many of which were rooted in pagan traditions, were replaced with codes based on Christian principles. This legal restructuring was not only a tool of religious conversion, but also a means of consolidating the order's control over the region. The new legal system reinforced the authority of the church and the order, while simultaneously undermining the autonomy of the Prussian clans. Education played a significant role in the Christianization process. The order established schools to educate the children of the native population, often using these institutions as a means to instill loyalty to the church and the order. These schools taught Christian doctrine, European customs, and the German language, effectively erasing much of the indigenous cultural identity over time. The younger generation, shaped by this new system, became the primary vehicle for the long-term integration of Prussia into Christendom. Despite the order's efforts, the process of Christianization was not universally successful or uncontested. Many Prussian tribes resisted conversion, often reverting to their traditional beliefs in secret. The destruction of sacred sites and the suppression of traditional practices fueled resentment among the population, leading to periodic uprisings and acts of defiance. The order responded to these challenges with renewed campaigns of repression, further entrenching the cycle of resistance and retaliation. The forced Christianization of Prussia was a cornerstone of the Teutonic Order's mission, and it had profound and lasting effects on the region. While it achieved the goal of integrating Prussia into the Christian world, it did so at the cost of the native population's cultural identity and autonomy. The imposition of Christianity marked the end of the Prussian tribe's traditional way of life and set the stage for the region's transformation into a Europeanized, Christianized society under the control of the Teutonic Order. The Teutonic Order's mission to conquer and Christianize Prussia was not only sanctioned, but actively supported by both the Catholic Church and the Holy Roman Empire. This support was essential in providing the order with the legitimacy, resources, and legal framework necessary to pursue their ambitions. The papacy and the empire played a pivotal role in shaping the order's actions, ensuring that their campaigns were viewed as holy crusades and granting them authority to govern the conquered territories. Without this backing, the Teutonic Order's efforts may have been far less successful. At the heart of this support was the papal endorsement of the order's mission. Pope Honorius III, in 1221, explicitly recognized the Teutonic Order as a military religious organization tasked with the Christianization of the pagan tribes of Prussia. The Pope's support was crucial, as it gave the order's spiritual legitimacy and reinforced their role as champions of the Catholic faith. By framing the conquest as a crusade, the papacy elevated the mission from a mere territorial expansion to a holy war, placing it within the broader context of Christian duty and divine purpose. The papal authority also provided the Teutonic Order with a range of privileges and protections, such as the right to levy indulgences, spiritual rewards granted to those who participated in or supported the crusade. This meant that knights, nobles, and commoners from across Europe could contribute to the order's efforts with the promise of absolution from sins, reinforcing the idea that the conquest of Prussia was a morally righteous endeavor. Moreover, the Pope's support helped secure financial backing and the flow of resources from across Christendom. Bishops, monasteries, and wealthy individuals were encouraged to donate funds, land, and military supplies to the order. These resources allowed the order to sustain their campaigns over decades, building fortresses, recruiting new members, and managing their administrative duties in the conquered territories. On the imperial front, Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II played a crucial role in formalizing the order's autonomy and legal standing. His issuance of the Golden Bull of Rimini in 1226 granted the Teutonic Order sovereignty over any lands they conquered from the Prussians. This decree not only legitimized the order's rule, but also aligned their ambitions with those of the empire, allowing the order to operate as a quasi-sovereign state within the Baltic region. This arrangement made the Teutonic Order an extension of imperial power, a tool for expanding the influence of the Holy Roman Empire into previously uncharted territories. Additionally, the imperial support ensured that the Teutonic Order's rule over Prussia was protected against external threats and internal dissent. Emperor Frederick and his successors provided military and diplomatic backing, helping to solidify the order's dominance in the region. The emperor's influence was essential in negotiating conflicts with rival powers, such as Poland and Denmark, who sought to challenge the order's territorial ambitions. The alliance between the papacy, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Teutonic Order was mutually beneficial. The empire sought to extend its influence into the Baltic, where trade routes and strategic territories were of growing importance. The Church, on the other hand, sought to spread Christianity and diminish pagan influence, making the Teutonic Order a useful instrument for this religious mission. The papal and imperial support did not come without controversy. Critics within Christendom questioned the extent of the order's power and the legitimacy of its conquests. Some argued that the harsh tactics employed by the order, including forced Christianization and mass subjugation of the Prussian tribes, were inconsistent with the ideals of Christian charity and compassion. However, these concerns were largely overshadowed by the political and religious goals that both the Church and the Empire sought to achieve through their alliance with the order. Ultimately, the combined support of the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire provided the Teutonic Order with a solid foundation for their conquest of Prussia. This support transformed the order into a powerful force capable of reshaping the Baltic region, while also ensuring that their actions were validated by the highest religious and political authorities of the time. Throughout their conquest of Prussia, the Teutonic Order skillfully navigated a complex web of diplomatic interactions and alliances with various European powers. While their primary goal was territorial expansion and the Christianization of the Prussians, the order understood the importance of forming strategic partnerships to consolidate their gains and protect their interests. These alliances were forged through both persuasion and coercion, often balancing military superiority with political negotiation. Through these diplomatic efforts, the Teutonic Order was able to secure their foothold in Prussia and maintain a degree of influence beyond their immediate conquests. One of the key diplomatic tactics employed by the order was the forging of alliances with neighboring Christian states. Early in their campaigns, the order sought partnerships with local European rulers, including monarchs from Poland, Hungary, and the Holy Roman Empire. These alliances allowed the order to expand their military reach, defend their territories, and safeguard their Christian mission from competing forces. For example, in 1226, Duke Conrad of Masovia invited the Teutonic Knights into Prussia to aid his campaign against the pagan tribes. In return, Conrad ceded control over significant territories in Prussia to the order, establishing a precedent for future territorial gains. The order also established relationships with the broader European nobility by offering them opportunities for land acquisition, military glory, and spiritual rewards. Through these alliances, the order attracted knights, mercenaries, and noble families eager to participate in their crusading efforts. This not only strengthened the military capacity of the order, but also ensured that their conquests would be supported by a loyal class of supporters. However, the order's diplomatic maneuvers were not solely limited to securing alliances. They also engaged in significant negotiations with rival Christian powers, particularly Poland, Denmark, and the Baltic tribes. These negotiations were often complex, involving both threats of military action and efforts to mediate disputes through treaties and compromises. The order's diplomacy was characterized by its ability to leverage military strength, while presenting itself as a just and necessary power for the Christianization of Prussia. One notable example of this diplomatic prowess was the Treaty of Christburg in 1249. Faced with growing resistance from the Polish Duke Przemysl II and internal pressures within Prussia, the Teutonic Order sought to negotiate a peaceful resolution. The treaty established a power-sharing arrangement between the order and Poland over the contested regions of Prussia, thereby stabilizing relations between the two powers. Although it temporarily reduced the conflict, the order maintained its control over the key territories it had conquered, ensuring its dominance in the region. Furthermore, the Teutonic Order excelled at exploiting divisions within rival states and factions. By fostering tensions between neighboring rulers, the order could secure advantageous positions without facing unified opposition. This tactic was evident in their dealings with Lithuania, where they skillfully played off rival Lithuanian princes to gain territory and influence over time. Such alliances were often short-lived, but they provided the order with the flexibility to expand their influence through strategic diplomacy. The order also maintained a close relationship with the church, which provided them with a diplomatic buffer and religious justification for their territorial ambitions. Papal support acted as a powerful diplomatic tool, allowing the order to exert influence over European Christian politics. Papal envoys were frequently involved in mediating disputes, and the Church's blessing on the order's conquests helped legitimize their actions even when they faced criticism from other Christian powers. However, the Teutonic Order's diplomatic efforts were not without challenges. The tensions with Poland, for instance, persisted for decades, and their alliances were often tested by territorial disputes, shifting allegiances, and rivalries over influence in the Baltic region. Additionally, the Order's relationship with the papacy occasionally strained over the extent of its independence, especially as the Order sought to expand its power beyond Prussia into other territories. Despite these difficulties, the Order's diplomatic acumen enabled them to maintain a degree of influence beyond their military conquests. Through alliances, negotiations, and strategic maneuvering, the Teutonic Order secured their position as a dominant force in the Baltic region, setting the stage for a lasting legacy in the medieval Christian world. The Teutonic Order's conquest of Prussia was significantly bolstered by their advancements in military technology and innovative tactics. Unlike traditional feudal armies that relied on the strength of individual knights and the cohesion of noble retinues, the Teutonic Order employed a combination of advanced siege engineering, specialized infantry, and strategic use of cavalry. These innovations allowed the Order to adapt to the challenging terrain and combat the well-organized Prussian tribes, who were skilled in guerrilla warfare and forest-based combat. One of the most notable technological advancements employed by the Order was their mastery of castle fortifications. The construction of massive stone fortresses like Marienburg, Malbork, symbolized the Order's ability to dominate and control key regions within Prussia. These castles were built with thick walls, extensive moats, and defensive features such as gatehouses, drawbridges, and arrow slits, making them nearly impregnable during sieges. The Order's engineers employed advanced techniques for siege warfare, utilizing stone catapults, battering rams, and later, gunpowder weapons to breach fortified strongholds. Moreover, the Teutonic Knights were pioneers in the use of specialized military units. Their disciplined infantry formations, known as Schutzen, archers, and spearmen, were trained for both offensive and defensive actions. These units played a crucial role in battles, providing long-range fire support, as well as acting as a solid front line during engagements with Prussian tribes. The effectiveness of these infantry formations was amplified by strict discipline and training, ensuring that they operated as a cohesive unit even in the face of fierce resistance. The Order also placed significant emphasis on cavalry, particularly heavy cavalry or Knechten, who were skilled in close combat and acted as shock troops during assaults. These mounted knights, heavily armored and well-armed, were capable of delivering devastating charges against enemy forces. The combination of heavy cavalry and well-organized infantry allowed the Teutonic Order to outmaneuver the fragmented Prussian tribes, whose guerrilla tactics relied heavily on mobility and the use of natural terrain. Another key technological innovation was the use of early forms of gunpowder weapons. By the late 13th century, the Teutonic Order had begun incorporating cannons and other early artillery into their military campaigns. These weapons gave them a significant advantage in sieges, allowing them to break through the defenses of Prussian strongholds that were once considered impregnable. The deployment of gunpowder-based weapons added a new layer of firepower to the Order's arsenal, complementing traditional medieval tactics with the destructive power of explosives. In addition to technological advancements, the Teutonic Order developed a systematic approach to logistics and supply lines. Their ability to sustain prolonged campaigns across vast and hostile territories was due in part to their sophisticated organizational structure. They established well-maintained roads, strategic supply depots, and well-disciplined provisions management systems. These logistical innovations ensured that their armies could sustain long campaigns, enabling them to maintain a persistent military presence in Prussia. The Order's innovative use of military technology was not merely about conquest, it was also about control. By imposing their advanced military practices, including strict discipline, training, and use of technology, the Teutonic Knights sought to dominate the native Prussian population. The superiority of their military systems became a symbol of their dominance, both on the battlefield and in the day-to-day administration of conquered territories. Furthermore, the Teutonic Order's success with military innovations extended beyond direct confrontations with the Prussian tribes. Their ability to defend, administer, and manage newly acquired lands was reliant on their continued technological advancements. Whether it was maintaining supply lines during winter campaigns or securing trade routes, their mastery of military innovations allowed them to establish a firm foothold in the region and sustain their power over time. The combination of innovative military technology, disciplined infantry, and highly trained cavalry allowed the Teutonic Order to gain the upper hand in their conquest of Prussia. By blending traditional medieval practices with cutting-edge advancements, the Order ensured their dominance in both warfare and the administration of the territories they controlled. The Teutonic Order's conquest of Prussia not only involved military dominance, but also a deliberate and systematic process of colonization and economic exploitation. Once the Order had subdued the Prussian tribes and established control over the land, they implemented policies aimed at transforming the conquered territories into economically productive regions that could generate wealth for the Order and its European patrons. This process of colonization involved the settlement of German-speaking farmers, the redistribution of land, and the extraction of resources, all of which reshaped the economic landscape of Prussia. One of the key components of the Order's colonization strategy was the establishment of towns and villages populated by German settlers. These settlers, primarily composed of German-speaking farmers, craftsmen, and merchants, were encouraged to migrate to Prussia to cultivate and develop the land. The Order offered incentives such as land grants, tax privileges, and the promise of religious protection to attract settlers, ensuring a steady flow of colonists over time. These new settlements were modeled after European towns, featuring organized grids, market squares, and structures built according to Western European architectural styles. The redistribution of land played a crucial role in the colonization process. The Teutonic Order confiscated large tracts of land from the Prussian tribes, redistributing it among German nobles, the clergy, and the Order itself. These newly acquired lands were turned into manors, estates, and productive agricultural properties, often worked by forced labor or through the servitude of the native population. The economic focus was not only on agricultural productivity, but also on developing trade, craft production, and resource extraction. The settlers were encouraged to engage in specialized production, such as brewing, leatherworking, and metalworking, which became key components of the Order's economy. The exploitation of natural resources was a significant factor in the economic development of Prussia. The Teutonic Order sought to extract resources such as timber, fish, minerals, and furs from the region. Forests were cleared for agricultural purposes, while rivers and lakes were utilized for fishing and transportation. Mining became an important economic activity, with the extraction of iron, copper, and other minerals to supply the growing demand for metals in Europe. The wealth generated through these activities was redirected toward the financing of military campaigns, the construction of fortifications, and the maintenance of the Order's infrastructure. Trade played a pivotal role in the economic exploitation of Prussia. The Order established a network of trade routes linking Prussia to other regions of Europe, facilitating the exchange of goods and commodities. The newly founded towns became centers for commerce, where merchants from across Europe gathered to buy and sell goods. The Teutonic Knights imposed customs duties and taxes on this trade, further enriching the Order and its supporters. This economic model not only benefited the Order, but also ensured the continued economic dependence of the region on Western European markets. Furthermore, the colonization process led to the Germanization of the Prussian population. The German settlers were granted rights and privileges that were denied to the native Prussians. Over time, this contributed to the erosion of the indigenous Prussian cultural identity as the German language, customs, and legal systems were imposed. The Prussian tribes, who once had a rich and distinct cultural heritage, found themselves marginalized and economically subordinated in the newly Germanized landscape. The Teutonic Order also established a complex system of serfdom and feudalism, wherein the native population was coerced into labor and required to pay various forms of tribute to the order and the settlers. This exploitation extended beyond agricultural work to include forced labor on military construction projects, trade caravans, and economic ventures controlled by the order. Through these mechanisms, the order extracted wealth directly from the land and its inhabitants. Ultimately, the colonization and economic exploitation of Prussia reshaped the region into a heavily regulated, Europeanized economy. The Teutonic Order's policies of land redistribution, resource extraction, and trade monopolization transformed Prussia into a highly controlled and profit-driven enterprise. This economic system not only provided the order with substantial wealth, but also ensured their long-term dominance over the region, with profound social, cultural, and political consequences for the native Prussian population. The Teutonic Order's conquest and Christianization of Prussia did not merely focus on territorial expansion and religious conversion. It also aimed at the cultural and social suppression of the native Prussian tribes. The order sought to dismantle the traditional structures, beliefs, and identities of the indigenous people, replacing them with a unified Christian identity and Europeanized social order. This process was systematic and often brutal, involving the destruction of cultural sites, suppression of language and traditions, and the imposition of foreign customs and legal systems. One of the most visible aspects of cultural suppression was the destruction of sacred sites and the eradication of Prussian religious practices. The Prussian tribes worshipped a pantheon of deities connected to nature and the elements, with sacred groves, stones, and shrines at the heart of their spiritual life. The Teutonic Knights considered these pagan beliefs to be heretical and incompatible with Christianity. As a result, sacred sites were either converted into Christian locations, such as churches or cemeteries, or entirely destroyed. This erasure of Prussian religious heritage not only stripped the tribes of their spiritual foundations, but also undermined their sense of identity and belonging. The suppression of the Prussian language was another method employed by the Teutonic Order to impose control. The native Prussians spoke a distinct language, rich in oral traditions and unique dialects, which played an essential role in their cultural heritage. However, the order sought to Germanize the population, ensuring that German became the dominant language in administrative, legal, and social spheres. This linguistic transformation was carried out through schools, religious instruction, and everyday communication, resulting in the gradual decline of the Prussian language. By eradicating the native tongue, the order aimed to erase cultural distinctions and create a homogeneous, Europeanized society. The social structures of the Prussian tribes were deeply rooted in their tribal traditions and communal organization. These structures were based on kinship, collective decision-making, and a close connection to the land. However, the Teutonic Order dismantled these systems in favor of a feudal hierarchy, where land was centralized in the hands of the order, German nobles, and settlers. Traditional tribal leaders were displaced or subordinated to new authorities, while the native population was coerced into serfdom or subjected to harsh servitude. This forced reorganization fragmented the social fabric of Prussian communities, stripping them of their autonomy and forcing them into a rigid, class-based system. Legal systems were another significant aspect of cultural suppression. The Prussian tribes had their own systems of law and justice, which were closely tied to their religious beliefs and social norms. However, with the imposition of Christian law and the German legal code, these traditional systems were supplanted. The order's legal framework was designed to enforce obedience, impose Christian morality, and prevent rebellion. Prussian customs and traditional justice were often viewed as inferior and backward, resulting in a system that treated the indigenous people as subservient subjects rather than equal members of society. Additionally, the suppression of traditional Prussian culture extended to education. The Teutonic Order established schools and monasteries that taught European ideals and Western-style education. These institutions indoctrinated the younger generations with Christian doctrine and German cultural values, erasing indigenous knowledge systems and oral traditions. The imposition of Christian education was not just a means of controlling the population, but also an effort to reshape the identity of the next generation into one that aligned with the European ideals of civilization. Cultural suppression also involved the persecution of those who resisted the imposed changes. Leaders, bards, and community members who clung to traditional practices were targeted, imprisoned, or executed as heretics and traitors. Acts of rebellion or cultural revival were met with violent repression, perpetuating a cycle of suppression and resistance. Over time, the Prussian tribes became increasingly marginalized, their cultural expressions subdued, and their social cohesion weakened. Despite these efforts, resistance to cultural suppression continued throughout the order's reign. Prussian communities sought to preserve their heritage through oral traditions, secret rituals, and the occasional resurgence of pagan practices in isolated regions. However, these efforts were often dangerous and ultimately futile against the overwhelming power of the Teutonic Order. In summary, the Teutonic Order's conquest of Prussia was deeply intertwined with the cultural and social suppression of the native tribes. Through the destruction of sacred sites, suppression of language, reorganization of social structures, and imposition of foreign legal and educational systems, the order sought to eliminate Prussian identity and integrate the region into the broader European Christian world. This process of cultural erasure had lasting impacts on the social and cultural landscape of Prussia, reshaping it into a territory dominated by Germanic influences and Christian orthodoxy. The conquest of Prussia by the Teutonic Order left a lasting impact on the region, shaping its political, social, and cultural landscape for centuries. The order's efforts to Christianize, colonize, and integrate Prussia into a European framework did not merely end with territorial domination, but laid the groundwork for a profound transformation that would persist even after the dissolution of the order in the 16th century. The legacy of the Teutonic Order in Prussia continues to influence the region's identity, governance, and historical memory to this day. One of the most significant long-term impacts of the order's conquest was the establishment of a Germanized and Christianized society. The imposition of German language, customs, legal systems, and religious practices integrated Prussia into the broader Western European sphere. Over time, this process of Germanization reshaped the identity of the native Prussian tribes, who were gradually assimilated into the larger Germanic culture. The erasure of Prussian traditions and languages meant that future generations would grow up in a society dominated by German culture, creating a lasting cultural legacy. The administrative system set up by the Teutonic Order also had long-term implications for governance in Prussia. Following the order's rule, many of the institutions and legal structures remained intact, influencing the political organization of the region for centuries. The concept of centralized authority, feudal lordship, and a structured hierarchy became firmly established, shaping the governance models of subsequent Polish, German, and Lithuanian rulers. The order's legal framework, which blended Christian moral authority with feudal law, contributed to the development of a more rigid, structured system of governance that persisted in the region. Economically, the colonization and exploitation of Prussia created a highly organized system that prioritized agriculture, trade, and resource extraction. The extraction of wealth from the land, combined with the creation of towns and markets, fostered a thriving economy centered around German settlers and the order's administration. Although the order's dominance waned over time, the economic foundations laid during their rule continued to influence Prussian development. The region's integration into the European economy allowed for further modernization in trade, industry, and infrastructure, setting the stage for Prussia's role as a major player in the emerging European powers. The military innovations and techniques introduced by the Teutonic Order also left a lasting legacy. Their advancements in siege warfare, infantry tactics, and the use of early artillery were adopted by other European armies, influencing the conduct of warfare across the continent. The Teutonic Order's experience in conquering and maintaining territories through military precision and strategic planning provided valuable lessons for future generations of European military leaders. Furthermore, the Order's disciplined and professional army became a model for organized military institutions in the region. However, the legacy of the Teutonic Order is not without controversy. The brutal suppression of Prussian tribes and the harsh treatment of the native population have left a deep scar on the collective memory of the region. The forced Christianization, the imposition of foreign rule, and the erasure of cultural identity are still topics of reflection and criticism in historical discourse. Modern descendants of the Prussian tribes and scholars grapple with the impact of these actions, acknowledging both the cultural loss and the resilience that arose in response to these efforts. Additionally, the geopolitical influence of the Teutonic Order set the stage for ongoing conflicts and territorial disputes. The territorial gains made by the order in the Baltic region created tensions with neighboring states, including Poland, Lithuania, and Denmark, leading to numerous wars and power struggles that shaped the future borders of these nations. The order's influence became a critical factor in shaping the political dynamics of the region for centuries, influencing diplomatic relations, alliances, and territorial disputes that persisted well beyond their reign. The legacy of the Teutonic Order also contributed to the deep-seated identity of regions such as East Prussia, which became distinct from broader German or Slavic identities. This unique identity has been shaped by centuries of German settlement, Christian influence, and the persistence of regional traditions and customs influenced by the order's governance. Today, this legacy is reflected in the cultural heritage, regional dialects, and the historical narratives that continue to be passed down through generations. In summary, the conquest of Prussia by the Teutonic Order left a multifaceted legacy that influenced the region's political, social, economic, and cultural evolution. While their rule imposed significant changes, their impact on Prussia can still be observed in the enduring structures of governance, the dominance of German influence, and the ongoing exploration of the region's complex historical memory. The enduring legacy of the Teutonic Order's conquest of Prussia continues to be a subject of historical reflection, shaping not only the region's identity, but also its place within the broader context of European history. The complex interplay between conquest, colonization, and cultural transformation laid the foundation for a region that, even centuries later, retains the influence of its medieval past. As scholars, communities, and nations examine this history, they grapple with both the challenges and contributions of this transformative period, offering a deeper understanding of how the past shapes the present.